Mr. Speaker, I can tell the House today that it is my intention to return on the first day after the half-term recess to present our strategy for living with COVID. Provided the current encouraging trends in the data continue, it is my expectation that we will be able to end the last domestic restrictions, including the legal requirement to self-isolate if you test positive, a full month early, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Was the Business Secretary right to say that fraud is not something that people experience in their day-to-day lives?
Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, of course this government and this country despises those who defraud people, and that's why we crack down on fraudsters. Mr. Speaker.
He could stand up to his Chancellor, tell him to support families rather than loading them with debt. Tell him to look at those bumper profits of oil and gas giants. Shell's profits up £14 billion this year. BP's profits up £9.5 billion this year. Mr. Speaker, every second of the day, they've made £750 extra profit from rising prices. At the same time, households are facing an extra £700 a year on their bills. Why on earth is this government forcing loans on British families when they should be asking those with an unexpected windfall to pay a little more to keep household bills down?
Mr. Speaker, the Labour plan would clobber supplies. It's an improvement on what I thought he stood for, which was nationalising the energy companies. Maybe he's dropped that one now. I can't tell whether he's dropped that one or not. But, Mr. Speaker, what he would be doing, maybe he has. And we kept going over Christmas and New Year when they opposed it, Mr. Speaker. And that's why we have the fastest growing economy in the G7, not just last year, but this year as well, as I never tire of saying.
He can bluff and bluster all he likes. The reality is this. On top of the Tory tax rises, on top of the soaring prices, the loan shark Chancellor and his unwitting sidekick have now kicked up a buy now, pay later scheme.
Our plan for jobs is working, Mr. Speaker. We have record low youth unemployment. Our plan for the NHS and care is working, Mr. Speaker. They have no plan at all, Mr. Speaker. Our plan for the country is working. We have a great vision, Mr. Speaker, to unite and level up across our country. They have no plan whatever, Mr. Speaker. And I say to him, plan beats no plan. We have a great plan for our country. They play politics.
Speaker, 74-year-old Janet had £25,000 stolen by fraudsters. She told the BBC, "The money was my mum and dad's. I felt I'd let them down." For Janet, and for the 4 million people who fell victim to fraudsters and online scammers last year, fraud is a crime. So does the Prime Minister understand the hurt he and his ministers cause fraud victims like Janet when they write them out of the crime figures and dismiss fraud as something people don't experience in their day-to-day lives? Mr. Speaker, will the Prime Minister correct the record on crime figures and apologise?
He knows very, very well that this government hates fraud. It hates online fraud. We're tackling the scammers by helping people to come forward when they get an email, when they get duped. Of course, we're helping them in any way that we can, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In the panic Downing Street staffing reshuffle at the weekend, the Prime Minister appointed to a senior role a man who recently lobbied the government on behalf of Huawei Technologies, a hostile state vendor that this House legislated to exclude entirely from our country's 5G networks. Given the number 10 Director of Communications has, by definition, access to some of the most sensitive government information, can the Prime Minister tell the House whether Mr Harry's present role requires enhanced developed vetting and strap clearance, and whether he has gone through the necessary checks to provide for that level of clearance before he took up his post?
Minister.
A curious question to come from the benches that contain someone who took, I think, £586,000 from the Chinese government to support his office.
Can I ask the Prime Minister a question about Sue Gray's report? I asked him, well, Colleagues may groan. I'm only asking this question because I asked the Prime Minister last week and I didn't get a straight answer. It's important because it's about those who make the law obeying the law. The Prime Minister wants to be judged on the facts, and that's right. So can I ask him to commit at the dispatch box that upon conclusion of the Metropolitan Police investigation, will he ensure that Sue Gray's final report is published immediately and in full?
Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, with great respect to my right honourable friend, I do believe I answered that last Monday. So that as soon as all the inquiries are concluded, I will immediately publish in full whatever Sue Gray gives me.
At the height of the lockdown restrictions in 2020, my constituent, who's worked for the NHS for over 30 years, was diagnosed with a tumour on her spine. Whilst in hospital undergoing painful surgery, her family obeyed the rules and didn't visit her. Mr. Speaker, in the last few minutes, a photo has emerged of the Prime Minister in Downing Street on the 15th of December 2020, surrounded by alcohol, food and people wearing tinsel. It looks a lot like one of the Christmas parties he told us never happened. So for the sake of my constituent and the sacrifices she made, will the Prime Minister be referring this party to the police, as it's not one of the ones already being investigated?